Does India live with day-to-day contradictions? It's becoming prosperous, has supported lots of galleries, exhibitions, and even investment funds devoted to art. Recently, some Hindu nationalists shut down the art exhibition and sent a young art student to jail for an art project that they found to be offensive. So we'll talk to our panelists next. Stay with us, Passion for Truth. Joe police officers and television crews marched in the art department at a state-run university in Gujarat state, and there was a digital enlargement of a painted work depicting a female wielding weapons in her many arms, and it offended them. Even the university officials agreed with that. The student was studying in that university. How do you read that?
Well, I think cultural values tend to evolve and change with time. What is considered indecent and unacceptable 50 years ago, what was considered, today may not be such a problem. And so I think we have to understand that authorities are expected, and the governments are expected to enforce what the public believes at any particular time, what is proper and what is not proper. So the authorities often get caught up in enforcing what today is believed to be immoral or illicit. But 5 years from now, they may not enforce those kinds of mores, public mores, because they're no longer considered indecent. It used to be in this country, in books, you couldn't even make, and in movies certainly, you couldn't show sex scenes, or you couldn't describe in great detail, or use certain language that are considered curse words, etc. So I think the government has little choice but to enforce at any particular time what the public might complain about.
Wait
Joe,
a minute.
I wanted to take exception to Joe on at least this point. I agree that cultures change and evolve. And in this country, of course, there's a lot of stuff that I consider really bad art, and a lot of it is provocative art. And the perfect example is in New York some years ago, there was a portrait of the Virgin Mary done out of elephant dung, and Catholics found it very offensive. Now, I'm not a Catholic, so I don't subscribe to that particular mythology, so I don't care what they do, though I thought it was bad art. But I asked the question, well, if it's bad art and it's not sponsored by the government, if it's not the government paying for it, then you know what you do? You just simply say, it's junk, it's bad art, I'm not going to see it. And the problem is when you mix government with it, then suddenly the government is taking the sides on whether either to censor art or maybe even to give money to someone to do stuff that I, Ed Hudgens, think is junk. And that's where a civilized country makes that separation and lets people do what they want. And if I think it's garbage, then I
But is it a conflict between the governmental values or governmental role and the society's values?
Well,
as Joe points out, is it a ongoing conflict, Fred?
Is that direct?
Go ahead.
I think that. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll defer.
All right. I think I'd like to add that viewing just this attack on a university, on getting some student arrested as a singular event won't be the justice with the topic. Look at just last year, Shiv Sainiks in Maharashtra attacked a library and destroyed those very books, those claim that in India, Aryans came and settled and they created a civilization. Then even we go back and look at the human development department in India where they even astrology and palmistry getting recognition them as sciences. So I mean,
like creationism in this country.
Hindu fundamentalist factor which lately is taking deep roots, they are trying to attack on everything. Whatever as per their philosophy is alien and as per their philosophy is not acceptable. So even in this university attack, the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, an organization which is the student wing of the RSS, was involved. And they were the ones, when the dean supported the student, they got the dean suspended. So that is the case. I think this is they are very systematic manner. They are attacking all those places and they harass them and they are bringing the Hindu fundamentalism on the front burner.
At a time of stress, now this is true for individuals as it is true for nations, as it is true for cultures. In time of stress, to the degree to which that entity experiences or feels that stress, it will react by reverting to the last known certitude or verity that it held most deeply. I think what we're seeing is a culture and a civilization and a nation under stress, and you see the inclination to revert to verities which are most deeply ingrained and most deeply enrooted. And it may not be rational in all occasions, because a civilization or a culture differs, of course, by its very nature from one place to another. But that culture or civilization is the product, is the net, the gross product of that which that culture and those people have known to be necessary for their survival and advancement. So those are a whole lot of words to describe, I think, some of the reasoning behind the defensiveness that a culture feels from assaults upon its essence from the outside.
I think Fred's right about a culture under stress, but I want to go back to Dr. Singh's, I think, very insightful point about the religious element. Unfortunately, and India is going through a lot of changes. Most of them are good changes in terms of industrialization and the growth of the economy, and this is all very, very well. But what India does not have, perhaps as well as some other countries have done, or maybe it's dealing with this, is bringing religion into it and radicalism, as opposed to the Western. When the United States was founded and when it went through its growth, there was still a notion of some tolerance for other religions. A religion was more of a personal thing, not a public thing, and that allowed us to go through a lot of these transitions without having, frankly, religious wars. Sadly, in India, as well as other countries, you have Muslim, you have Hindu, you have other different religions, bringing that element in, and there's really no rational discussion about these matters. It's simply a matter of using brute force, and I think that that's the element that's added that makes it so inflammatory and volatile.
Now, let's move away a little bit from this. Animal rights activists protested when hundreds of unruly monkeys were rounded up and shut in cages. But when thousands of innocent civilians are locked up in jail, activists suddenly disappear. How do you read that?
Putting a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court for the monkeys won't make the person land in the jail. But as a human rights activist, what happened to the human rights activists in Punjab? We know dozens of them were eliminated when they brought the question of unidentified bodies and their cremations. And so the harassment of even those honest journalists and activists like Tehlka.com, when they brought out the corruption out, how the government and their functionaries prosecuted
Graham Staines, the Australian missionary, and his two kids
were 7 and 9 years old. Burnt alive.
And we didn't see, I mean, there were protests, but they were inconsequential. Very inconsequential.
When you described the incarceration of hundreds of monkeys, I thought for a moment you were making a recommendation for how the people should deal with Congress. But I think perhaps even more humanely than the monkeys' incarceration.
And I think the interesting part is that India's PR spin masters, those who are suppressing the human rights abuses and all, portray it as a compassion for animals. They tell it, look, our society, how compassionate we are taking care of even our... how we can misbehave with a human being.
I mean, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. Why can you not have...
I think